And now, Lifestyles Unlimited presents the Real Estate Investor Radio Show. Over the next hour, we unfold your map to financial freedom. You'll learn how to retire through investing in single-family and multifamily real estate. You'll learn how to create cash flow and build wealth so you can have the time and money to live the lifestyle you want.
Welcome to the show. This is Andy Webb with Lifestyles Unlimited. And as always, we're working on your financial freedom. And if you caught the prior show, you know we're out and about in the RV bunker. And today I am coming to you from Montrose, Colorado, the western side of the state. We managed to make it over the very steep grade of the Continental Divide via Monarchs Pass. And the truck struggled, but we got here, and I'm glad we got here. We are joined today by a local investor. Local meaning local to Colorado. We'll hear if he's investing locally or not. I don't know that yet. We'll find out. I do know Denver has been on fire, so does that make sense to invest even in Denver or in Colorado? We'll find out. And this guy, he's a longtime Lifestyles Unlimited member. He is an ambassador. We'll find out what that means. And fully passive. He is a fully passive investor. So let's hear what he has to say. Welcome to the show, Tyler. How are you today?
Hey, good morning, Andy. I'm doing well, thanks. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Hey, and thank you for joining us today. Why don't you start by setting the table for us? Tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe what you were doing before you became, I know it's been a while now, but before you became a real estate investor.
Yeah, so, like a lot of people, I went to college, got a degree in engineering, started my career in the oil field and working through that for about 7 or 8 years at a time. Wyoming, Texas, various different oil plays. And at some point I started looking into, different investment vehicles to build wealth and stumbled upon, real estate investing. Went to a couple different conferences, different sessions on some different ways to do that. Found Lifestyles Unlimited really kind of by happenstance and went up and did, the initial meeting, did the 2-day and signed up as a passive, and or as a preferred member rather, back in 2012, I guess. So yeah, it's been about 10 years. And, at the time I wanted to invest in real estate, wanted to have my own properties, but my job just, at the time didn't really, make it easy to do that. So that's why I particularly enjoyed the passive model. It still allowed me to work my career while, investing my money in a vehicle that I thought was going to help build wealth.
Yeah, and you mentioned oil field, and I can't tell you how many oil and gas guys I've had on the show. Very volatile industry. Mm-hmm. Are you still working in the industry, or have you gotten out?
Well, yeah, actually. So, COVID obviously had a big impact on the oil industry and many industries in general. But so I did get out a couple years ago and actually started a franchise business, or bought into a franchise business. And so I've been running that for the last year and a half. And that's been kind of fun to learn, kind of scratch that entrepreneurial itch, so to speak. But continuing my real estate investing career all through that time as well.
So you joined in 2012. By the way, I joined in 2012 as well. I went and this is important for the listener, I think, to understand. I went a totally different path. I went down the single family route. You said, hey, I'm working a job that I don't have the time to do this thing. So passive is the role that makes sense in that case. What can you define for the listener? What does that mean? I'm a passive investor.
Sure. So really it's just, you go and you network, you meet people at a lot of these different events. Obviously there are managing partners, lead investors, syndicators, whatever you want to call them, that are raising capital to buy the properties, and more or less you're just the silent party. So you really have no ownership in the property outside of just investing in the LLC, and the lead partner, the syndicator, is pretty much 100% in charge of putting the deal together, operating it, running it, and ultimately selling it. And you take your dividends, distributions, usually on a quarterly basis, and then take your payout at the end. So you have very little, if any, involvement in the property. You read your monthly reports, ask questions, and kind of just go on about your life.
Yeah. And Key point here. I mentioned single family. That's something I'm doing by myself with my wife. We own them outright, right? You're talking, however, not about single family. Here we're talking about a passive investor in multifamily, in apartments. So not a single door.
Sure.
You hear us talk about doors all the time, right? 50 doors, 100 doors, 200 doors, 300 doors. It keeps going up. So we're talking here about investing passively in apartments. Tyler, it took me a while to get. I wish I'd started when you did, 2012. We didn't quite have the capital, which is why we went the single family route. But we started doing that in the past couple of years since COVID struck, and it's been tremendous. In your time in that decade, how many apartment investments have you been able to get into?
Yeah, so over that 12 years, I mean, I've only been in 17 total, which may sound like a lot. But there's a lot of folks that have been in, much shorter time frame than I have, and been in, 2-3 times that. So it really just kind of depends on, how active you are, how much capital you have, and how aggressive you want to go with it. So there's a lot of different strategies around it. Some folks, prefer to have split up, invest in a lot of different deals with a very small amount. And other folks tend to do very large amounts on very limited deals, which more or less is kind of the route that I go, but maybe a little more risky. But
you've got your capital in one place, and to your point, it does depend on what your capital, what your starting point is, which again is why we went single family. We really built it up that way, and we're leveraging that now finally. So to the listener, if you don't quite have the capital to go into apartments, and I'll tell you, Tyler, when I went to the free workshop, I didn't even know I could invest in apartments. We had in our minds back then single family, maybe duplexes. I'm your host, Andy Webb, and we are joined today by Tyler. He is in Colorado. We'll find out where he is in Colorado, and I want to learn a little bit about the market as much as he can share with us. But Tyler, before we get to that, you were just saying that you went to Lifestyles Unlimited. You didn't know that apartment investing is a thing, nor did I. It's very eye-opening. You went in, as I did, thinking single families are out to go. Did you guys do any single family or just straight to multifamily?
No, we went straight to multifamily.
Okay.
So yeah, at the time, my job was fairly demanding, and we moved around a lot, and so I just didn't have the time and or the interest to try to manage single family homes. I wanted to do single family, but I thought that trying to manage them from afar would be rather complicated. So we just went straight into passive multifamily investing.
And that's actually a very good segue. You and I chatted a little bit via email, and you've hooked me up with one of the members here in Colorado that is doing single family from Colorado remotely. She'll be joining me. Kara's her name. She'll be joining me on the show next week. So to the listener that's maybe not in Texas or in one of those markets that we talk about that's great for single family houses, yeah, you can do it too. I'm managing my portfolio from the road. So yeah, it is doable, but I do understand the apprehension there. And the apartments, again, wonderful way to go. Now, where were you guys at when you became members? You've moved around a lot. Where were you when you joined Lifestyles Unlimited?
Yeah, so we were living in Corpus Christi, Texas at the time, and we found the Central Texas Lifestyles location up there in San Antonio, which is about 100 miles away or so. Okay,
so did you drive up there to do the free workshop and the 2-day and all that good stuff?
Yep, drove up there dozens of times, attending the nightly meetings, did the workshop, did the 2-day. Yeah, did pretty much everything out of that office.
Okay. And that's an important point, I think, as well for the listener. You don't have to drive anywhere to do what we're talking about. So the free workshop, Tyler, I mentioned that a minute ago. That's how I got my introduction. That's how you got your introduction. That's actually online. If you go to our website, lifestylesunlimited.com, there's a button there that says Join Free Workshop. It's an hour and a half. We have them midday. We have them in the evenings. Just gives you an introduction to real estate investing in general, apartments and houses, and what it is that we do as an organization. By the way, as an organization, we've been around for over 30 years. This will be our 32nd year, so very long track record. And you and I both went to the free workshop, said, yeah, this is great, let's do it, joined the Financial Freedom Program, at least I did at that point, and that takes you to the 2-day seminar, which is also online now or in person, however you want to do that. Tell us a little bit about that. Where did you do that? That was in Central Texas and San Antonio. Who taught that, and what were some of your big takeaways?
Yeah, so that was, yep, you're right. It was San Antonio. We did that, again, 10 years ago. And the big takeaways, I guess, for me, we had kind of started to learn a little about investing in single family homes. Like, we understood the model. We understood, especially coming out of 2008, 2009, that there was opportunities out there. And then, the first day was, of course, single family day. We were kind of learning the basics, learning how single family works. And then you come back for the second day, and that's really where you get into multifamily. And I think the big thing for me, being more of an analytical type B personality, is it doesn't, you have more control over multifamily investing than you do over single family. The market really kind of dictates the overall price of multifamily differently. So it's run more as a business and is valued on effectively cash flow and net operating income. So even if you're an up or a down market, you can always find deals. And if you're a good manager and can run implement a model to bring the property up to where it needs to be, you can still make quite a bit of money, irrelevant of usually in what's going on in the market. So yeah. I like that. I like the ability to actually have more control over your investment, and rather than just kind of letting the market dictate whatever that price is.
That's a very important point, and we often talk on the radio program about the 5 ways that we make money with real estate. There's the cash flow, the equity capture, the equity buildup as the mortgage is paid down by my residents. There's the appreciation. There are the tax advantages. Those apply to both houses and apartments, but to your point, apartments, we make money a 6th way, and that's that value, that forced appreciation, where we do take control and we improve upon the asset physically or the operations and improve that net operating income, and really can drive up the value. It's amazing now that I've gotten into these and am actually seeing these reports and seeing the returns, Tyler. It's a tremendous thing. Now let's talk just a little bit. I want to come back to apartments in the next segment, but let's talk about where you are now. You were in Corpus Christi at the time, going up to San Antonio. We've learned that you don't have to be physically present to make any of these sessions. Where are you now? Where's your home base?
Sure. Yeah. So we live in a suburb outside of Denver called Lakewood. We've been here. Well, we moved here 2013, I guess. So really, we weren't even members of Lifestyles very long in Texas before we moved up here. And at the time, I really thought that I was the only member up here, and so it was a little bit of difficulty, trying to stay engaged with the lifestyle community while being in Denver and trying to, invest my money with the folks that I had met during my time in Texas. So it's been a little bit of a challenge, but the nice thing is that Lifestyles has grown over the last, at least since I've been in the group, tremendously in terms of expanding their online education and then their nationwide sort of online learning platform. And it just keeps growing and getting better and better. So it's really helped.
And that's what I wanted to say there is, just the outspring of COVID is the fact that we couldn't meet in person. So what have we done? Everything shifted online. That's been a game changer, hasn't it? Yeah, for sure.
We've got a pretty big base here now, but when we first moved here, as far as I knew, there were very few. So the membership base here has grown, and having that ability to connect with other members via webinars and whatever else that's going on has been invaluable, really.
So you are in Denver, and we'll learn in the next segment what you do as an ambassador. I think that's important for the listener, especially for those that may be catching the podcasts that are outside of Texas or where we have our brick and mortar offices. Yeah, you can do it from anywhere in the U.S. I mean, you can be anywhere in the world. We do have international members that are investing passively as multifamily investors as well. We've got about a minute or so. What can you tell us about the Colorado market from a real estate investor perspective? Is it a good market? Should I invest here?
Yeah, it is. Honestly, I think there's a lot of interest here. The issue, I don't have any money invested here. Unfortunately, it'd be nice to be able to do that, because I do like being able to, go and visit the properties, at least on a intermediate basis. But, there's a lot of economy growth here, a lot of population growth. The economy is very diverse, so I think from that perspective, it's a great place. Colorado Springs, just south of us, is another great place. I think, from a passive investor perspective, of course, we need lead investors to put the deals together. And to my knowledge, there's just, for whatever reason, hasn't been a whole lot of attention here. And part of that could be, cap rates are pretty low and prices are pretty high, like a lot of other major MSAs. But They're just, doesn't seem to be a lot of attention here, at least from our community.
Yeah. Hey, sounds like Dallas. Cap rates are low, prices are high, but we're still investing there too. So, hey, we're going to head into a break. I want to hear about geographically, if you're not investing in Colorado, where are you investing? So we'll get to that when we come back.
Got questions? Call Lifestyles Unlimited at 855-497-4335. The Real Estate Investor Radio Show continues next.
Successful Lifestyles Unlimited member retires in 10 months.
The hardest part for me was to drop off my son, go to a job that I absolutely hated for 5 years, but know that that was a sacrifice that I needed to make, and then only be able to get to spend 2 hours with him after school before he had to go back to bed. So that's why once we started and we joined Lifestyles, we said, okay, we have a roadmap. We know what we're gonna do. And then a month later, we find out we're pregnant with baby number 2. And we're like, okay, we gotta kick it up a notch. So that's how we were able to purchase 4 different properties and replace in 10 months. Replace my income in 10 months so that whenever I finished maternity leave, I didn't have to go back to work.
I think a couple weeks before baby came out is when we closed on our fourplex. And that was enough for her not to have to go back to work.
Are you ready for your roadmap to real estate retirement? Attend the online free workshop just like Carolina did. Register at lifestylesunlimitedworkshop.com.
Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Andy Webb, and I am joined today by Tyler. We just heard that Tyler is in Denver, Colorado, and he's been investing as a passive investor for a decade or longer now as a member at Lifestyles Unlimited. He joined when he was in Corpus Christi, went to the physical in-person events as we did them back then in San Antonio. And you heard from me just now, we're doing everything online now. So whether you can make that 2-day in person in Central Texas or Dallas, where I normally sit, or you have to do it online. If I go to any events right now while I'm bumping around in the RV bunker, those are naturally 100% virtual, and there are a lot of events going on. Tyler, we talked about the free workshop. We talked about the 2-day financial freedom seminar, which is where you learn about single family and multifamily. We're going to talk a little bit about geographical spread. I want to hear where you're investing, and maybe we can talk a little bit about some of the other educational opportunities and then what you do as an ambassador. But to get back to your investments, you haven't done any in Colorado. We just heard that. I do know we have some aspiring leads here in the state. We'll see what those guys pull together. But where are you investing, if not in Colorado?
Yeah, so over the 10 years or so, I've done invested in a lot of deals in Texas. Of course, Texas is a great place. It's got a great economy, great population growth, business friendly. But as the group or the community has spread nationwide, I've been looking into other markets, and so I've done a couple deals in Arizona, for example. That's another hot market, the Phoenix, Tucson area. In a deal in Alabama, which is another great place. And then I've done a few in Kansas, actually, of all places, and that honestly, those were some of my favorites so far. They were not exactly bustling, booming metropolises, but like we said in the last segment, it doesn't really matter necessarily what the economy is doing or what that particular MSA has been doing. If you can find a great deal in the market and you get that forced appreciation, put in the right strategy and the money to get it up from more or less a distressed state up into market rents or market rates, you can do very well. And honestly, that's probably one of the best investments I made was in a couple properties in Topeka, Kansas.
Yeah, I know at least one of the lead investors that is putting together some of the investments up there. We have a number of them, actually, and he's doing very well. And it's a great point. We just recently got into an investment in a small town in East Texas, so it doesn't have to be these giant MSAs. You want to look at the environment, of course. When you're looking, are you looking at the region? Are you looking at the investment, or are you looking at the lead or the syndicator? What's your big criteria there?
Yeah, all of the above. I think most importantly, the syndicator, the person who's actually going to be managing the project, putting the deal together, is probably one of the biggest criteria, right? Because their ability to make a breaker deal is paramount. And as a passive investor, you have some options or some some things you can do, if things start to go south, but really it's mostly in their hands. And so they have to, be capable and competent and have the ability to execute on that specific business model. And so I tend to look at that first, and then, you look at the property or the geographics and the property kind of second and third, I suppose. At least I do. But if the business model makes sense and confident in the person putting the deal together, then it should be a good investment. Should, knock wood, but.
Yeah, you'll get the private placement memorandum with 1,000 little risk warnings and this and that, but it's the underlying asset is when chosen correctly can be very, very solid. Are you looking for? I'm curious. So we talk about the deal types or the investment types on a kind of a spectrum, going from cash flowing, what we call yield play apartments, to the deep value add, where I might not see any cash flow for a couple of years, but a massive capital gain on the back end, and the hybrid somewhere in the middle. Is there a particular investment type that you personally are targeting?
Not particularly. I mean, I try to survey them all, and again, it comes down to timing. Is that lead? Do I have faith in that lead investor, and do I like the deal? I will say that yield is getting harder and harder to find these days, especially with the amount of money that's coming to the market and the lower cap rates. And so I'm not just throwing money at every deal that's promising 3 to 5% or 4 to 6, whatever it is. So I am being a little bit more selective these days, and really kind of picking and choosing, passing on a lot of opportunities, a lot of probably great opportunities. But I think it's just kind of the way the market is right now. And of course, I'd love to be investing in properties that could promise 8 to 10% distributions, but I'm just not seeing those right now. So we're sitting on a little bit of cash and just really kind of looking for that next, more attractive. I guess you could qualify it as a value maybe, but probably not those deep values. They're out there. They're deep too. A little bit harder to find. Mm-hmm.
Sure. And it's a valid point. And as a longtime single family investor, I'm just going to define, and a lot of the terminology for the listener, if you don't understand what some of these words or terms mean, we go into in the 2-day financial freedom seminar. And again, you can learn more if you go to lifestylesunlimited.com. Go to the free workshop. We'll talk about the 2-day there. But cap rate, right? What is that cap rate? Well, it's essentially the return on your money. And that is getting compressed. It is getting a little bit smaller, and we're talking about those regular distributions. That has nothing to do with it does, but ultimately that value play and that capital gain on the back end. Single family, we're seeing that compressed as well as interest rates go up. Now, these two may not be correlated. In fact, I'm glad to be shifting some of my cash right now into apartments as well, for the passive, from the passive perspective. But you've got several. You've done 17 over the 10 years. Some of those have gone what I would say is full cycle, meaning they've sold. Do you have a favorite investment or one you would tell us about that's maybe gone run the full gamut?
Yeah, like I was saying earlier, I mean, I was fortunate enough to get into a deal in Topeka, Kansas with a new lead at the time, and his business model it made a lot of sense. And so you typically don't think of Topeka doesn't really come up on the radar as your top 10 places of investing, but it was a great deal. The business model makes sense, and it was a fairly small deal at the time. It was 106 units over three separate, I'll call it 3 separate deals or 3 separate properties, if you will, but we bundled them into one, and we had to basically renovate all 106 units under a very strict timeline due to the financing we had. But the thing I liked about it was it did have a timeline. We had a strategy. We had a more or less an end point that we had to get to. We knew that the market, or that the deals were undervalued because the rents were way below market. We knew where they needed to get to, and so by investing all the capital into bringing them up to market rents, we knew that the return was going to be good, and it was. And so I think the goal was to have it for 18 months. I think we held it for 22. And this was actually in COVID time. So we invested this and bought this deal in the end of 2019, held it all through 2020 and disposed of it, I think, in 21, beginning of 21. And I'm trying to remember the numbers, but it was about a 2.5x equity multiple, something like that. So
over 100% return.
They get 250 back, more or less, or
wow,
250. So yeah.
Wow, great numbers, Topeka, Kansas. Hey, that's great to hear.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to make a point for the listener. Maybe you can help us make this point. We've mentioned lead investors. Like you said earlier, these are the guys, the syndicators, the commonly known as general partners. They're the ones that are putting the investment together. Are these just some people off the street? How do I know that they're good investors for me? What is it about these leads? They've gone through the lifestyles rigors as well, right?
Yeah, they're all members just like the rest of us. They've decided to go on and take on that role and responsibility and take some additional education. So, as you know, Lifestyles has an enormous library of different online courses that you can go to, and depending on the different level of membership, you have access to various programs. And so, passive being one, we have our curriculum. The leads have theirs, which is more.
Makes for very educated investors. I'm your host, Andy Webb. If you have any questions for me, you can send me an email to askandy@luinc.com. Again, askandy@luinc.com. And I'm joined today by Tyler. Tyler is an investor, longtime member, in fact, of Lifestyles Unlimited, and he's based now out of Denver. We heard earlier in the segment how he joined. If you missed any of the earlier show, go to lifestylesunlimited.com and click on the radio button. These programs are archived there, so you can listen at will. And Tyler, just ahead of the break, we were talking about the educational component for the leads. So these aren't just random people that I'm throwing my money at and hoping I get something back. These are very well educated investors. They've gone through really the ringers, right, to get that certified lead designation. So I know that they're ready to go. There's the education component, but what else? They're not doing this by themselves. Can you tell us a little bit about who they have by their sides if they need a helping hand?
Yeah, sure. So, in addition to all the extra education, Lifestyles has a network of very successful multifamily mentors that they can call really at any time if they have questions, if they run into issues, and they do, especially as, if you haven't done this before, obviously, there's a lot that can potentially go wrong with any properties, right? I mean, it's like they always say, it's not a matter of if, but when you're going to have a fire at your complex, right? So I think for a lot of lead investors, the first time a fire happens, you're probably really not prepared for it and not really sure what to do. But there's a lot of folks in the network that have been through that and can walk them through that process. And so they definitely have that support. They're not out there, alone by any means. And so I think as a passive investor, that's a little extra level of comfort, so to speak, that, there are resources and there's help out there.
Absolutely. We have the mentors. In fact, since we're in Denver, in my mind, coming from Texas, which takes me 2 days to get out of pulling the RV, we're not a long shot from Indiana. One of our national mentors, Nicole Scott, she operates with her husband some apartments up there. Guess what? They got whammed by a tornado. So hey, if you're in the tornado alley like I am, and you're worried about that, well, we have somebody that's dealt with that. We have that experience now, dealing with insurance and getting everything up and running, and that project has turned out for them to be a great one. Aside from the mentors, though, we also have our operations consultants, and these are people that have a history, work history in the apartment industry, long-time management typically, and sometimes 30 years of experience, and they're there as well to help our lead investors get things up and running, make sure things are running right. Now, Tyler, you wear an interesting hat. You're not a mentor. You're not an ops consultant, but you are an ambassador in this beautiful state of Colorado where I am right now. Can you tell us a little bit about what an ambassador is? How did you come to be an ambassador, and what is it you're trying to achieve here in Colorado?
Sure. So the ambassador program, I think, officially started sometime in 2018, if I'm remembering right. And Terry Gilbler, our operations consulting manager, I guess, her and Lynn Moreau put this program together as more of an outreach for a lot of the members that were outside of Texas. And so as the community has grown, I think they felt the need that it would be helpful to have at least somebody in these major areas that could donate, volunteer their time, kind of be that extension of the Lifestyles community to just kind of help the local membership group. And so they rolled that out, I want to say, in 2018, and we're looking for volunteers. at the time, I thought I was the only person here, so I said, sure, I'll sign up for it. And lo and behold, there were other members out there. And so we, just started slowly kind of collecting everybody, getting, contacts together and forming a little group and community here in Denver. And it's grown pretty substantially between Denver and Colorado Springs and even up into Fort Collins. But so the ambassador, like I said, it's an extension of, the Lifestyles training model, but we're not employees. We're, just members like everyone else, volunteering our time to help others answer questions, point them in the right direction, and then, keep the momentum going after the 2 days. So we do monthly meetups. We'll host, put webinars together on different topics that maybe folks have interest in, as well as invite, vendors and other folks to come and hang out with us and give our members a little more, face-to-face time and try to add additional value that way.
Yeah, it's a great way, to our earlier conversation, you said, that initially when you moved from Texas to Colorado a year after joining Lifestyles, it was difficult to connect with lead investors. Well, this is a great way to do it if you are out of state, is through these virtual meetups. And Tyler, I'm looking at the calendar here. I see now some of these may have passed by the time the listener catches the podcast, but Las Vegas, Nevada, Hawaii. Hey, that sounds like a great place to go. I see one in Georgia coming up. Nashville, Tennessee, Detroit. I mean, just across the nation. And of course, you have one coming up as well, a meetup. When is that going to be?
Yeah, so this is just kind of our monthly networking meetup. So it's local, it's downtown, close to downtown, and it's really open to anybody. So all membership levels, guests, whomever that just kind of want to, get together and, maybe talk about deals they're in, talk about potential deals, talk about the market, and really just kind of share information and try to learn a little bit more from each other.
That's in Denver, downtown Denver.
It is. Yep.
Okay, and that's on the 17th. To the listener, hey, reach out to me if you're in that area. Maybe I can help you get connected with Tyler. Again, my email is askandy@luinc.com. So great event. Hey, I mistimed my RV trip through Colorado, Tyler. If we'd planned a little better, we could have swung through there, but we're headed south here in a couple of days. We're going to swing down the other direction, so we'll miss that. But thank you very much, by the way, for being an ambassador and for organizing these things, because as somebody that's been doing this as long as you have and I have, I know that community is extremely, extremely important. It can be a very lonely game if you're out there doing this all by yourself. It can be downright impossible. So it's important to have that community and that ecosystem around you. So 10-year investor, lots of passive investments, joined in 2012. What's on the horizon? What kind of goals do you have? What are you thinking for the future for you and your, I assume, family? You said we a couple times. We just heard about Tyler. Is there more going on there?
Yeah. So I'm married. I have one 5-year-old and another one on the way here in a couple weeks, actually. So
oh wow,
we'll be a family of 4 here soon. But so yeah, I mean, we're still working. We're still kind of going that route. Real estate, at least for us, has been certainly a way to build wealth and, provide for our family. We're not retired by any means, and not that it's, it's just kind of the way that we chose to run our investments and the way that we choose to live our lives. But so yeah, we're still looking for, obviously passive deals. I would say that, it's, we've been able to invest and kind of build our cash reserves. And so we've kind of been flirting around with the idea of potentially buying our own, small property somewhere, as an independent rental owner, an IRO. So that could be a possibility. Denver, of course, being a very tough market, I'm not sure if we'd be able to do it here, but we're looking, some surrounding areas. We can get better pricing on deals.
Yeah, I'll tell you, we drove up to Garden of the Gods while we were in Pueblo, which is in Colorado Springs there. Garden of the Gods is, or near there. But, wow, there's a lot of apartment construction going on, and we noticed as we were driving through the city, a lot of Class A stuff, which is the newer builds, the higher price stuff. Obviously, you'd be targeting, if you do an IRO, a Class B, Class C?
Yeah, ideally. And, you got to, start small, right? If you're going to do it yourself, you have to have quite a bit more cash. I think that's part of the reason why, the syndication model works is because you pull a large group of investors and each one contributes, a minimal amount, and you can raise large sums of money to buy those 100, 200, 300 unit apartments. It's pretty tough to do that on your own. But
yeah, get the capital together with helping hands from your network, going back to that community, going back to what you're doing as an ambassador, helping others, come up through the network. Speaking to the listener now, you heard, you got connected with Lifestyles 10 years ago. You heard the message. For the person that's on the fence, do you have any recommendations or next steps, things they should do if they're interested in becoming a real estate investor, whether single family or multifamily, doesn't matter?
Right. Yeah. So with anything, it's all about education, and Lifestyles. There's nothing that Lifestyle teaches that you can't find out there on the internet or in books and whatever. I think the power is really the network that they provide. And so I would say if, for anybody listening that's interested in taking that first step, want to learn more, obviously the free workshop is a great way to start. But then beyond that, that really just gives you kind of a taste. I would say, the introductory fee to go to the 2-day is pretty small. Invest that money, go to the 2-day. If you can do it in person, that's ideal. And so, there's a lot of great 2-day presenters. David Fisher was the one, he's done this a long time. He's the one that did mine, 10 years ago, and he's still doing them today, I believe. So he's if you can find one that he's doing, try to sign up for his 2-day. But that's the first step, I would say, is at least get through the 2-day. It's a lot more eye-opening, makes a lot more sense by the end of that. And then, figure out if it makes sense for you from there.
Yeah, single family, what's my path going to be? And that's what it takes, to your point, is the education to even understand what do I have the capacity to handle from a capital perspective, et cetera. And for the listener, you mentioned that the financial freedom, so it's practically pennies to get into that. I'm going to give a website here. I wasn't planning on it, but if you go to givemetotalfreedom.com, that'll tell you about that financial freedom program with that 2-day. Use the promo code, all caps, SAVE BIG, written together, SAVE BIG. 2 years for $297. Go to that 2-day as often as you like and get that education Tyler was talking about. You will be well on your way. Hey, Tyler, I appreciate you joining us today from Denver. Have a great meetup here in a couple weeks. You have a great day.
The information and opinions you hear on the Lifestyles Unlimited Real Estate Investor Radio Show are those of the hosts, guests, and callers. The Lifestyles Unlimited Real Estate Investor Radio Show is for entertainment purposes only. Please consult a professional regarding your personal investment needs. Nothing presented constitutes an endorsement, recommendation, offer, or solicitation to buy or sell any product or security.